Good afternoon. I'm especially honored to be here today because when I was a little kid, my teachers thought I was a big dope. Big because I've had a weight problem for my entire life, and a dope because I did poorly on IQ tests. When I grew up in New Jersey in the mid-1950s, the tradition was to give group IQ tests to students pretty much every year or two. And the psychologist who came into our classroom to give the test scared the bejeebies out of me. She was really scary looking, like, yeah, just really made me scared. So I became very test anxious, or at least that's why I would like to think I did poorly. I did poorly on the test. As a result, my teachers thought I was stupid, and since they thought I was stupid, I thought I was stupid. And since I thought I was stupid, I did stupid work. And they were happy I did stupid work because I was meeting their expectations. And I was happy that they were happy, and everyone was pretty happy. So it was a nice, happy kind of environment, except that I was kind of a loser. And it wasn't until I was in 4th grade that I had a teacher, Mrs. Alexa, who thought that there was something more to a student than a test score. And she expected more from me, and I gave her more. I really liked Mrs. Alexa. She was married. In any case, so I became a good student. And so I defeated that self-fulfilling prophecy, but many students don't have a teacher like Mrs. Alexa and become victims of that self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, that was elementary school tests, but the same principle applies to college admissions tests. College admissions tests use different acronyms, SAT, ACT, later it's the GRE, but they all measure the same thing. They're all basically IQ tests, and that's been shown statistically. So the question is, what is the story with those tests? Why do we use them? Well, when they were first introduced in the early 1900s, they actually made some sense because most of the students taking the tests were fairly homogeneous. They were largely male, they were white, they were middle, or upper class, and they went to good schools and so on. But as the century progressed, 3 things changed. The first thing that changed is that the populations of students taking the tests became much broader. There weren't as many males, there weren't as many whites, there were people from diverse cultures, diverse linguistic backgrounds, diverse styles of learning. It was a different world, as you know. The second thing that changed is we learned something surprising, and that is the tests were introduced to create a meritocracy rather than just using your parents' last name or how rich they were or what their social class was to do college admissions. But it turned out that the test scores were very highly correlated with socioeconomic status. So what looked like a replacement for socioeconomic status turned out to be largely more of the same. And the third thing we learned is that the skills you need to survive today are just much broader than the skills you needed to survive in the early 1900s. It's a different world. It's a world that's changing very quickly, and in today's world, you not only need the memory and analytical skills that are so important on those tests, you also need to be creative. You need to be able to adapt to a rapidly changing environment in a creative and flexible way, because if you don't, your business goes out of business, or you can't keep up with the economy, or you can't keep up with your intimate relationship or whatever. You need analytical skills to be able to ask whether your creative ideas are any good. You need practical skills to be able to execute your ideas and to persuade others of their value, because as we all know, some people are very good analytically or they're creative, but they can't actually make anything work. They don't have much common sense. And you need wisdom and ethically based skills in order to ensure that your idea is for a common good. Well, if you need this broader range of skills today in order to adapt flexibly to the environment, why do we still use these tests that are 100 years old? Well, one reason is just inertia. We've been using them for 100 years. People get used to them. They don't want to change. But imagine if we still used the medical tests of 100 years ago, how many people would be dead? And as a result of these tests, a lot of people actually end up intellectually dead because they're deprived of opportunities. So one is inertia. A second reason is what I call pseudo-quantification. People are very taken with these exact sounding numbers, 570 or 26 or whatever. And what they forget sometimes is that just because you have an exact sounding number doesn't really mean it predicts very much. The third reason is what I call the similarity reason. And that is the people who make the decisions in many cases are people themselves who did well on the test, because otherwise they wouldn't have gotten into college and wouldn't have gotten the job. And the fundamental principle of interpersonal attraction is that we're attracted to people like ourselves. So they look for people like themselves, just as when it was run by very, very rich people, they look for people like themselves. Fourth reason is who pays for it? Well, the students do. So that's good for the colleges. A fifth reason is what I call the publication reason, and that is a magazine that was about to go out of business needed an idea to survive, and some marketing people got this good idea to rank colleges, and later hospitals and other things, and so it became kind of a trap. And now, many colleges, because of these publications, sort of count out the ratings, and they get stuck into a system of ratings that really don't tell you much about anything. And the sixth reason is basically superstition. People start to attribute magical properties to these tests that they just don't have. Now, we all have our superstitions. I wear a gold chain around my neck. I got it when I was a teenager. My parents told me it would bring me good luck. I don't know if it brings me good luck, but I still wear it. I'm not going to take the risk of taking it off because I think I've been pretty lucky. Or maybe you go up to an elevator and the button's already lit and you keep pressing it even though you know that the elevator will come once it's lit. And the reason you do that is because you're always rewarded for doing it. The elevator always comes. So it's partially superstition, and it's also a superstition that we can't do any better. So the question then is, can we do any better? And the answer is yes. When I was a professor at Yale, my colleagues and I created a project called the Rainbow Project, and what we did is devise tests of creative, analytical, and practical skills. And the question was, if we do a national project all over the country with students in colleges ranging from community colleges to middle-of-the-range colleges to highly prestigious colleges, can we do better than the standardized tests? And what we found is that we could double prediction of first-year academic average over the conventional standardized tests like the SAT and the ACT. Second, we found that we could cut ethnic group differences about in half. And third, we found that indeed it was possible to separate creative and practical performance from the kinds of memory and analytical performance that the test tested. So these were great results, and I was really happy, and they were published as the lead article in the top journal in the field. And we were funded by a testing company, and they saw our great results, and they cut off our funding. So that was what we call in New Jersey a bummer. And at that point, I asked, do I want to spend 20 more years writing articles that even I've stopped reading? And so I decided, I have to go into administration so I can actually do something. So I went to Tufts, I became Dean of Arts and Sciences, and we started a project called Kaleidoscope. And Kaleidoscope was not like Rainbow. Rainbow was a research project. Kaleidoscope was actually used for all undergraduate admissions at Tufts during the years I was there, the 5 years I was there, and it's still being used. And what we found by measuring creative, analytical, practical, and I'd added to the theory now wisdom-based and ethical skills, is we could improve prediction of academic performance, improve prediction of extracurricular and leadership performance, essentially eliminate ethnic group differences, and make the students applying and their parents much happier because we're looking at the whole person, not just as the person as a test score. So I did that for 5 years, but Tufts is kind of an elite school and it's sort of limited. And then I had this great opportunity to come to Oklahoma State as provost. And in collaboration with Kyle Ray and others, we started on July 1st, 2012, Panorama, which is a program being used at Oklahoma State to admit students not only for their ACTs or SATs, and not only their grades, but for their creative, analytical, practical, and wisdom-based skills. Now, there's one other thing. If you're going to start admitting kids for their creative skills, you want to make sure that you're also teaching and assessing them in the way they learn. because it would be a disaster if you start admitting creative kids and then you only teach them in a way that's like for memory. So when I took introductory psychology, I got a C. And my professor said to me, you know, there's a famous Sternberg in psychology. It's obvious there won't be another one. So as a result, I switched to math. I did worse in math than I did in psychology. I went back to psychology with my C. And 35 years later, I was president of the American Psychological Association. I said to the guy who was president the year before, how did I get to be president when I had a C in introductory psychology? He said, I had a C too. So what I learned is that we need to teach not only to sort of memory and analytical skills like the ACT measures, but to the creative, analytical, practical, and wisdom-based skills you'll actually need when you're on the job. And so at Oklahoma State, we have the Learning and Student Success Opportunity Center to help students learn in the way that's appropriate for them. We have the Institute for Teaching and Learning Excellence, which helps teachers teach to the way students learn. What do we conclude? First, that the kinds of tests we use for college admissions, they do something, but they're out of date, just like medical tests would be. We can do better than these, and that's what we should do. Thanks very much for listening.